Hi there, and welcome to Out There, a cryptid podcast. I'm Josh, and today we have a very special edition of Weird Club. Joining me are Morgan Blanchard and Caitlin Ort from the Yellow Wallpaper, a new stage adaptation of Charlotte Perkins Gilman's classic psychological horror story that is headed to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Today, we're talking about bringing the unsettling tale to the stage, the themes that still resonate more than a century later, and even the strange experiences with unseen forces they've encountered while working on the show. This is the Yellow Wallpaper. Let's dive in. Okay, well, so for our Weird Club people, we have a really special edition of Weird Club today. It's the merge of my loves, so my ghosts and then my theater family. So today we have Caitlin and Morgan from this beautiful new show that's going to be going to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So for all my non-theater people, this is a place where new shows go and they perform in Scotland, and it's a really cool artistic space for new shows and shows that have been already done but are going longer, and it's a super theatrical community place, but this show is super cool because it lines up with all the woo-woo stuff that we love here at Out There. So Caitlin and Morgan, welcome to Weird Club. You are now Weird Club inductees. It's pretty cool, pretty major. But welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. Excited to be here.
Yay. Okay, so before we get into all of our ghost nonsense and the ghost world, can you guys tell us a little bit about the show? Just kind of give the listeners a good jumping off point for what makes this show so freaking cool.
Yeah. The Yellow Wallpaper, it's a piece that I've been developing for almost 7 years now. Morgan is my assistant choreographer, and it's based off of the short story written in 1892 by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and it's famously one of the most studied Gothic horrors of its time. It's about a woman who is being treated for female hysteria, which at the time was basically anytime a woman had anything going on, she would be called hysterical, and the treatment, of course, would be, why don't you lock her in a room for several months without seeing anyone, without reading or writing or doing anything?
Right.
So Charlotte Perkins Gilman experienced this treatment when she had her first child. And in response to it, she wrote The Yellow Wallpaper. And it's this really supernatural charged story about this woman stuck in a room with yellow wallpaper, and to pass the time in confinement, she starts studying the patterns, and over time her psychosis starts to unravel, and she starts seeing women trapped inside of the pattern, and she feels that it is her job to solve the pattern and free the women from the confines of the wallpaper, and ultimately loses her mind in the process. And it's very much charged with fantasy and hauntings and hallucinations and kind of questioning how reliable is the narrator, and it brings to question a lot about the medical misogyny at large, but also just kind of the basic question of how many stories do we need to hear about a woman who's asking to be believed, and we don't.
Right.
Yeah. So it's beautiful, but also so heartbreaking, and it sticks with you. I mean, that's why I made this play adaptation with it's a dance theater thriller, because I read this story in high school English class. Like, I read this when I was 16, and then I reread it again like 10 years later and was like, whoa, I feel this in my bones. Like, I feel this story in my bones, and I want to put it on stage.
That's awesome. I mean, this is a story that feels like it's been parts of history that have sort of been hidden away in the shadows.
Right.
And you know, for our listeners, after listening to Penhurst Asylum, we know that this is a story that multiple, you know, this is not just like a one woman story. This is so many different people, and not just women, so many just people in general being put into a place for normal feelings, average feelings that people just will feel sometimes, and being told, you know, you shouldn't feel that way, and then being told you're crazy, which then makes you feel like,
even crazy.
wait, yeah, am I crazy?
Yeah.
And there's so much energy that comes with that, that especially in a place like Penhurst, and honestly any place that is haunted with that sort of history, that energy does start to stick to walls, and they start to just seep out, so that when, you know, us visitors go through, we not only feel it, but we sometimes do see things as well, that might not even be a interactive spirit or somebody doing it still, but something that is just replayed because it was such a traumatic moment. And it's so awesome to also be doing that with dance specifically. Again, for the cryptid people, they're like, dance, and I'm like, yes guys, we do this. It is something we do, but it is so interesting to pair that with dance, because dance is such a spiritual, rich, historic thing that really a lot of times is feeling rather than, you know, just knowledge. So it is so awesome to be telling those two stories together. That's so cool. When you guys were like developing this, what was the communication between reality and the reality in the show? So like, does that make sense? Like the reality of like, this is happening versus, is this happening?
Yeah, that's kind of where the dance as a barometer comes into play. We have this incredible ensemble of dancer actors who we call them the women of the wallpaper, if you will, who, like, they are kind of not only the character of the house, but the spirits of the home, and the spirits that have been left here from women who have been previously confined. And they are slowly gaining power and traction and abilities to speak and move objects and make contact with the woman who's trapped in the room. So it's really like the intensity in which that choreography is infused in the story, but also when the choreography is infused in the living characters, that is kind of what blends the world of, wait, I'm not sure if this is something that she dreamed. Was this a nightmare? Is this happening for real in real time? Because eventually the women of the wallpaper become incredibly real to the protagonist, to the point that they seem even more real to her than her husband and her sister-in-law, who are there to take care of her. That's the supernatural part.
There's like several dream sequences in the show that sort of like also, of course, like help blur the lines between like reality and like interaction with these women in the walls. And I feel like the dance elements in those dream sequences are like so movement based that like you're creating a new movement language in those dream sequences that just like really makes you blurs the line between like what is she actually experiencing and what's reality and what is in her head.
Like what's paranoia versus did that actually happen, and her husband's trying to tell her it didn't. I mean, and Morgan, you can speak a bit more to John's experience. John is not only the main character's husband, but he is also her doctor and is the one who prescribed her this treatment, if you will. So there's a lot that happens in the scene work, but also in the dream sequences that kind of play into like whose side are we on between the protagonist and the husband.
Yeah, and I think like a super important thing to point out with John, who is the husband, is like he isn't this. I mean, ultimately he is this like misogynistic character when it comes down to it, but he always does actually have Jenny's best intentions at like, you know, in his heart.
Right.
And just at the time, knowing that he is a doctor and he's listening to other doctors' recommendations, and he thinks he's doing the right thing the whole time, but ultimately he's just like really hurting his own wife. Yeah, and I think, you know, as like it's the only male role in the show, but I think it's like super important that he is likable in a sense, because like it shows you just how sane Jenny is that she wants to be with this man, you know?
Right.
Or Jane.
Oh, sorry, what did I say?
I know the three named characters are Jane, John, and Jenny.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Chaos.
Jane.
Jane. And that's what I think is an element that is why the story sticks with people. Like, not only is the supernatural side of it so haunting, but what's really frightening is that the harm that is done in the world of like mental health treatment, the asylum world, because that's also hanging over her head. Like, if this treatment doesn't work, her husband will institutionalize her. Like, that's what's at stake. And it's never from this place of, oh, I wish I could control my wife more. It's that the men of this time were so convinced that they had it right. That like this was what was best. Like, this is the most cutting edge science that we've got. And like, this is the only way. And it just really begs the question, like, what are we going to look back on 100 years from now and think, oh my God, that was what they thought was the best thing to do for like women, like for women's mental health, for women's physical health. Like, it really makes me wonder, because, you know, back in the 1890s, like everyone subscribe to, yeah, this is what's best. And when Charlotte Perkins Gilman wrote this, she was one of the first people to put down the hammer and say, this is bullshit. Like,
I will say, I feel like they're definitely as good of a person as John maybe was trying to be. There are definitely men who weaponize these things against women.
Yeah.
I don't know, Josh, if you've ever heard of or like talked about I don't know the right word for it, but like asylum in Rhode Island. My grandparents grew up in Rhode Island. And I'm just remembering now, like my great grandfather was like in a circus. This is crazy. He was a ringleader in a circus, and his wife was,
of course,
contortionist. Right. And he like, they were together for so long, whatever, but he ended up like committing her, and he ended up to an asylum in Rhode Island, which I'm not thinking of the name of, but I know my cousins used to go there because it's abandoned. And my cousins used to like run around in the asylum to like to feel like ghost stuff. You like could break in, whatever. But my great grandfather had his ex-wife committed, and then he would take my grandma there on the weekends then to like listen to the women screaming and be like, if you ever misbehave, this is where I'm going to send you. So like there are dark men who do dark shit to women.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, and there are so many asylum stories and sanatoriums that that was the treatment where they were just sort of thrown in there as a lot of the times as a way of being like, I don't really know what to do with you, and I don't want anything to do with you. Exactly. So here you go.
I've told someone else this is the best option, you know, like have you.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's so like messed up in when like the Yellow Wallpaper is like a studied text in like many AP English university like coursework. And what's so messed up about this is that like the husband John is continually selling it to his wife that this is a country home that he got for her, but she keeps on picking up on little details of like, oh, but the windows in my room have bars on them, and there are like rings in the walls right by the headboard and right by the ankles of the footboard, like and like there's scratches everywhere, like the floor was like dug up by like hands.
Right.
And she keeps on mentioning these things of like, you know, I find this really peculiar that like things are chipped and scratched, and there's like these scratch marks that go in a ring around the room. Like, like it's like as if someone kept running in a circle, and they keep on justifying it as like, oh well, it used to be a nursery and they had some like, you know, like gym equipment for when the kids got older, or you know, like it was a kid's room, like that was meant to be monkey bars for a kid to play on. Like they keep on filling her with this idea of like, no, what you're seeing isn't what you're really seeing. And she's like realizing what kind of cage she was put in, which was, it was an abandoned asylum home that they rented for the summer.
And you know what's crazy? Like what you just said about like what you're seeing is not what you're seeing is a huge part of not only ghost stories as a whole, but as these asylum stories is a lot of the times these people, these women, these sometimes children were dropped there as a way of being like, you're going to go in there, you're going to meet other people. This is your safe place now. And they would get in there and be told that over and over again, but then they would be mistreated by the doctors and the nurses, or they would be chained to their beds, or they would be put in a room with that's the size of a closet with 5 other people and a bucket and said, this is it. And so it begs the question of, you know, if you weren't feeling, you know, because I don't want to put the word crazy on that because I don't think that's fair. But if you weren't already feeling something that made you start to question reality, if you're put in these conditions, it's going to start no matter what. I mean, anybody would start to feel this way of, you know, the paranoia really does start to set in. And then that paranoia then begins to lead to other things. For example, I mean, as we've seen in your show, it's this woman who's starting to see things in the wallpaper. And, you know, I don't know if you guys have this question in there, but it is this question of like, is she actually seeing things? Like, is this really the spirit of women who have been in this place before coming to talk to her? Or is this all just her brain having to do something being in this room and being scared?
Yeah. I mean, and like that really is like the question of like for the audience to answer. And like that's what I love about this show, and hearing people argue with each other about what they think was real, what they thought wasn't. Like particularly the ending, there's like a big question as to what they believe she may or may not have done to her husband. And I love hearing people argue about it, because that's what makes great theater and great art in general, is it makes people want to talk to each other. I also found it really interesting in the last run of the show, the feedback that we had from male audience members, I feel like was honestly some of the loudest and most enthusiastic. And I was hearing from a lot of and I was hearing from like a lot of men who came to see the show, particularly like men in their like, you know, 60s or 70s, who were saying, I had no idea like how much I would relate to this character, and like how much they felt like they connected to like the loneliness and the isolation of like, because not, you know, mental health journeys affect everyone, and to hear this really resonating, even though it is a very like female powered production, to hear like particularly older men in the house being like, number one, that was incredible, I had no idea I would enjoy this so much, but also to connect with this idea of feeling like they don't have the resources, like feeling like they've been in positions themselves of like, I know when I was in a place and I needed help and I didn't know how to get it. And like, that is like such a universal experience for a lot of people. Cause like, even if we all are living in an era where like access to therapy and like mental health resources has grown so much more, it's still a really universal feeling of being in a situation where you know you need help and don't know how to get it, or if you're in a place where you're so distant from yourself, even starting the journey to getting help feels not possible. So I really love that the show opens up those conversations to all audience members about like our own relationships to getting help when we need it.
Yeah.
I feel like something you said earlier, Josh, about like, you know, whether or not she's like actually experiencing these things, or if these women, if the energy is actually in the wall, or if it's just within her head. I think something that's really cool that Caitlin has developed over time is like how these women sort of come through the walls slowly over time throughout the show and like eventually find their voice and eventually find touch and can touch Jane. And so you are sort of led down this path, like as a viewer, as an audience member, you're led down this path to sort of blur the lines of like whether they're real or not. But also she starts to enjoy the women, you know, like she starts to find so much joy in these women and like solace and friendship in them in the way that it's like it's getting her through, whether or not it is in the walls or whether or not it is in her head. Like it is like something that is literally helping her pass the time, is like finding community with these women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's really interesting about that is that that's a fairly common thing in ghost stories themselves. Is you know, like obviously we don't have enough information about ghosts because we will always probably debate if they're real or not. But what we do have is patterns of and sort of beliefs and somewhat understandings that ghosts are and spirits are powered by energy. We've seen that when they use different electric fields, and so this idea that they gain power or like gain energy and are able to start talking or making sounds or touching is something that we do see a lot in stories of haunted houses and haunted places. Is that with more energy in a room, so either more people or just more machines, that spirits are able to do a little bit more than they could. And especially in places like asylums and sanatoriums and prisons, it feels as if the energy charge is so much higher. And I choose to believe that that's because of the state of which people lived there. People were always there at these moments of like, am I going to survive? Am I going to die here? Mm-hmm. What's tomorrow looking like? Is there a tomorrow? And so that energy doesn't just pass on with them, but it gets stuck. Mm-hmm. And so it replays over and over again. And, you know, we've seen in a lot of stories of spirits that people eventually do just find comfort with them. You know, we have so many very famous haunted houses and stuff where the workers who are there every day are like, oh, that's just Fred over there. Yeah. You have to say good morning to him. And then he'll turn off the lights in the middle of the day, but like, you know, it's whatever, you just keep going. And I think it's a really interesting reminder that they were people at some point. Like I'm sure there, you know, we have demons and all this stuff, but it's very interesting to think about how these people were there, and specifically with your show and your story, it's these women who have a common thread of living this experience that most people have never experienced nor want to experience. Right. And so you have this sort of group of women, which then gets into, you know, witchcraft and everything like that. But we have seen in history that groups of women together really do have some sort of charge, and this energy that an understanding with each other that a lot of men specifically have no feeling whatsoever like that. And historically we see groups of women as these sort of like taboo, scary things because maybe they are more powerful than we really understand.
Or if we allow women to gather and corroborate each other's stories, they'll be able to come back against the men who've been abusing them, you know? It's like, there's like, I love the history of witchcraft, like in America specifically, and like, you know, learning about, you know, even before the Salem witch trials, that like the concept of a witch was literally associated to women who provided healthcare to other women. That's literally all it was. Like, you know, if a woman needed an abortion for whatever reason, that was deemed as, oh my gosh, this woman killed the child and she's a witch, and like that she signed the devil's book and blah, 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 rather than, oh, she was giving them, you know, like life-saving healthcare. Got it.
Right. Or like the women who chose not to be married or just never, you know, found someone. Oh, so you can't fall in love. You're a witch.
Yes. Or like just women who used the earth to like create things like medicine,
God forbid.
and teas and like, you know, anything that they like that connected them to the earth. And if they lived alone, it's like, oh, that's witchcraft, because
Right.
we don't understand how a woman could possibly exist on her own without subscribing to this like patriarchal structure of like, get married, make children for me.
Right.
It's so wild. So yeah, there is like a definite sense of witchcraft about this, especially once the women start speaking and they can converse with each other. And it does feel like they've created this coven within the confines of this asylum. That's not an asylum. It's just a summer house. It's a summer house.
Right, of course, it's a summer house with chains on the walls and scratches everywhere.
Yeah.
That's what my summer house looks like too. So
same.
now,
it's just crazy stuff.
no, exactly. And when you guys have been doing this, because you've been creating this for a while, when you guys are in the room creating the story, how much of it is wanting to tell this gothic story as a sort of not ghost story, but sort of as this like tale of, is this real or not? Or how much of it is more that we're just telling the story and we're letting the audience decide what it's going to be?
That's so interesting. And Morgan, like, you can kind of talk about this too, in that like you've come into the fold as we've been making a lot of changes from the last go.
Yeah.
Originally, I feel like we were really honoring the way it was originally written. Like we did New York City Fringe in 2018. And I think we didn't mess with the storyline a ton. But in the recent...
Textually, I feel like so much of it is just pulled directly from the book.
Yes, yeah.
So it does really stay true to like the text of the book. Yeah.
But in the more recent iteration, like my sister, who's my co-adapter, co-creator here, she and I have been adding more of our own writing and inventing more scenes that were not in the original story. And particularly with like the nightmare sequences that Morgan had spoken about, like we've been really messing with the format a lot more to bring it into the horror genre further. Because I think I would consider it more of like a thriller in past tense, but now I would consider it much more in the horror genre, in that timelines are questioned, relationships are questioned and bent, and a lot of elements that are truly not written anywhere in the story, but my brain just kind of pulled some interesting subplots that I thought could add to the stakes and add to the paranoia. So yeah, we've kind of messed with it.
The horror aspect of it, I feel like, is really helped by there's like a soundscape that goes on that I think is like really informative of like when things are pulled out of the timeline in a way. I feel like the music really helps like either heighten the stakes or sort of make unclear, wait, is this happening in her head or is this happening in a dream? Is this happening? Which is cool.
And we also have, I'm so excited to say, for Fringe, we have our first ever sound designer joining the team. And we've been recording a lot of like human made noise, like breathing patterns and like feet walking and running on hardwood. And because I feel like that's classic. Like when you're going to see a ghost story or hear about a ghost story, so much about those things start with things that people hear rather than see.
100%. Yeah. And also, I mean, like, from our show, right? I could tell you guys a story about, you know, the Loveland frog, which is a supposed frog that is the size of a man that has been seen in Ohio that walks across the street. I tell you that, right? And all of us are kind of like, yo, okay, cool. Like, I guess like a frog dude. Awesome. Second, I add scary music to it. You're sitting there like, okay, well, fuck that. I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
And so it is this idea that like all of our senses sort of start to tell our brain what to feel and what to think without us having to do anything about it. So, I mean, classic ghost stories, you hear footsteps and your brain is automatically like, I'm the only person here, so that's fucking terrifying. And now a bird could fly past my window and I'm going to be scared because I'm in this heightened place. And what's so interesting is that to think about is like, imagine the women that this story happened to, living in that place all the time, seeing these things, feeling these things. So their body and their brains and their whole being is in this heightened place of like just any movement, a fly going past their face or anything that was normal becomes otherworldly or puts them in this place, which again goes to the question of like, you know, is she seeing things or is her brain making up things to have to cope with all of the feelings that she's feeling?
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm just thinking of this, you saying that, but it's almost like, you know, when you walk into a room after someone's gotten into an argument and you can feel that like something just went on here. Like imagine that happening time and again in the same room that these women are subjected to. And it's like, obviously that energy is going to leave a stain.
Yeah. That's so much crazy. of the science back then was about how like scientifically like women's brains can't handle as much as a man, right. So that it's up to the woman to regulate herself.
Of course.
And it's like the more you talk about being unwell, the worse it will get. Like that's literally something that like, you know, Morgan's character John says like you need to, like the more you talk about it, like the more you think about it, the worse it will become. And you're digging yourself an early grave by talking about what's happening to you.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
Now from development, from you guys doing this, I'm so curious. This is like a woo-woo question, but like, have you guys had any like dreams? Have you had any like crazy experiences that you're sort of like, well, okay, that was weird, from putting yourselves in this story that is based on, right? I'm not making that up. Is based on an actual story.
Yeah. It's based on the author's actual experience with postpartum.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, you know, you're dealing with someone who is probably on the other side now. Is she sending any sort of things to you guys, or like mid-show are you having like a light fall or just anything go wrong maybe?
There were a couple times, I don't know, Morgan, if you were at these rehearsals, but in preparation for our most recent run last fall, there would be times where I would be talking with my team about a concept, about especially like a spiritual concept for the ensemble, when then all of a sudden like all of the air conditioning cut out in the building and like everything went boom. I like left out of my chair. I genuinely left out of my chair, like as if it was in response of like, yes, like go for it.
Right.
That's it. And there've been a couple moments too. Like I think there was a rehearsal once where I was working with the women, and we were it was our first genuine stab about like how can we immediately connect these women to the protagonist, but still leaving the audience in question of did I see them move or did they not move? And we figured out some kind of phrase. And then once they did it for the first time with music, a door that we had open completely slammed shut. Oh. And again, but it felt like, you know, shocking at first, but it also felt like a confirmation. It felt like that's it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've had a couple of them and I kind of live for it. I like
Yes. I'm sure that you're going to have more in Edinburgh too. I mean,
we bet.
Like New York is of course a charged place. But in terms of history, it is still relatively a baby city. But then you have Edinburgh, which is probably one of the first cities, you know, of the Middle Ages and stuff. So you might have some more spirits, especially of women coming to see the show and being like, hell yeah, come on ladies, like let's fucking go.
Oh no, I genuinely am really excited to feel the energy, but also just the energy of audiences from such an international base, because like while this is an American story, like this treatment was used all over the world, like by everyone. Right. So I'm really
also other treatments too, like, you know, how people will probably find, you know, it relatable to something else as well.
Yes. So like I'm very curious to feel like just like the energy in the house as we're doing the show, but also just like kind of the energy in the city of where it takes us, because we're going to be like going through the streets doing like site specific choreography and like, you know, pulling people into the show that way. And I'm just like curious how that's going to feel like in a city that is really charged.
Yeah, I mean, especially a city that has its own witchcraft rumors and stories with it, that, you know, a group of women, especially, and I'm just thinking about this now, but like, especially with dance, I mean, God forbid a woman goes into the woods and dances and by herself to just hang out, and now she's dancing with the devil. Like, that's none of your business, first off, even if I was dancing with the devil. But you have this sort of that electric charge of I'm sure of these women who this experience happened to, and they had to, I'm sure in their time, they had to make the decision of like, do I just pretend like everything's normal so that I can survive and get out of this? Or do I feel whatever I'm feeling and continue in this space that I have no idea what's going to happen next?
Yeah, something my sister Megan, I remember her saying when we were doing some kind of talk back recently about like, there is something really like deeply rooted in the female experience in dance, in that like, when you think about the history of how much has been restricted of women, sometimes all we have is our bodies and the ability to like go in the woods with our friends and just like thrash our bodies around and scream.
Yes.
Like, sometimes that's literally all we have the power to do, like in hiding, in secret. And it's crazy how that still feels like so, I don't know. I feel like that's so easy to tap into from a personal level, like working on this show. When I think about like, you know, just the state of America, and we don't have to dive all the way into it, but you know, sometimes all I do have the power to do just in this moment is like get in a dance studio with my girls and like thrash our bodies around.
Right.
And dance, you know, and like, I think that's why I feel so strongly about this story being told through movement and through bodies, because like these stories stick in our bones, and it's like, the history of it is in our bones as well, like ancestrally it's there. I guess like the only like little history tidbit that I really find fascinating about the story is like when Charlotte Perkins Gilman published this, she sent this to the address of the doctor who created this treatment, like sent it right to his door. And it was like it was like a big deal. Like a lot of people in the newspapers were like trying to smear campaign her, saying that like she's just trying to ride the coattails of like the most famous doctor of our time. She's a liar, she's making it up. Whereas a lot of women started coming forward saying, no, I read this and like that happened to me. Like this was my experience with this, and like the system is corrupt.
Wait, I love that.
She was like a total baddie, and then she divorced her husband and moved to California with her kid and like lived her life.
She said, you know what? I'm not only going to make money off of this, but I'm going to fuck you up in the process.
Yes. Because historically, like one of the reasons so many men were like, this doctor knows what he's talking about, is he had for women the rest cure, which was solitary confinement. And for men, he had the West cure, which was literally a prescription to go horseback riding with his buddies out West and go camping.
Yeah.
So of course they all felt way better. Like if a man is struggling with depression or anxiety and goes on a horseback riding trip with his friends for a week, he's going to feel way better.
Yeah, get out there. Just ride your horse and Brokeback Mountain. You'll feel so much better.
And they all felt amazing. So they're like, honey, you got to listen to this doctor. He really knows what he's talking about.
And then these women are going and be like, yeah, I want the West cure. And he's like, yeah, the rest cure for sure. We're going to do that. They're like, no, the West. It's with the W. And he's like, yep, the rest with an R.
No, honey, I want to go horseback riding with my friends.
He's like, you will go horseback riding in your dreams because I'm going to lock you in this room.
Yes.
That is crazy. It's another thing of like, I mean, I'm a man, so I notice my privilege, but you know, it is another thing of how insane when we look at history and we look at the way that women specifically were treated is just like, and honestly still treated to this, like, let's not sugarcoat it. Like to this day, it is absolutely insane that there is this sort of difference. And you know, growing up with two sisters and a mom who was the breadwinner of the family and everything, I'm very lucky to realize the power that women do have. But also when you just start to look at it, I mean, like, you guys literally create life.
Mm.
What do men do? We do nothing. We just sit here and we're like,
then we go horseback riding.
exactly, with our buddies. So it is just insane that then the men were like, yeah, babe, you gots to get yourself into that room and just hang out there for a while by yourself.
Yeah, and just like this association of like the female mind and the female body being weak or frail or like more sensitive, and that like we need to tiptoe around women because like they can't handle the world the way men can. It's like, oh my God.
especially also with a postpartum, when your hormones are at the highest level because you just shoved a living baby out of a thing that is not that large to begin with, and then you're just like, yeah, well, you're crazy, so sorry about that.
And like postpartum treatment, like there was no such thing as postpartum treatment back then. It was just like, all right, the baby's out, like, good job.
See ya. Yeah.
Like there was really like very, very little attention, if any attention, to like the actual science of what happens to a woman's body in postpartum.
I still don't think there's not much attention to it now. So.
No, like, and I find that so wild. This idea of like, well, it's your job. It's the woman's job to just be okay with this experience. Like,
that is so crazy. And especially like back in the day when, like, of course now there's so many medicines and stuff that like help with the pain, but back then when it was literally like,
you're raw dogging it.
Yeah, literally bite down on this leather strap and hope for the best, baby. Like, what?
Yeah.
And then also, like, I'm just thinking about, it gets me on a spiral, but it's like the fact that like women were feeling so much pain and your body is literally in fight or flight because again, you are shoving a living being out of something that is not that large to begin. Like, it's just like crazy that then the men are like, oh, well, great work. Anyway, you gonna cook dinner tonight, or like, did you want me to like get sushi or something? Because like, what's the plan?
And then just like if anyone's struggling in postpartum, being like, okay, like, well, this is what you were made for. Like, why aren't you back on your feet? Like, this is your position. Like this, like if you can't fulfill that, you're a failure. And that's what, like, you know, our main character Jane really struggles with. Like, she is beating herself up constantly about like, I feel like I'm a burden. I feel like a failure. I feel like, you know, like I wanted to be this perfect wife for my husband and I can't even successfully be a new mom. Like, what's wrong with me? And she keeps putting it on herself throughout the story. And it's so heartbreaking to like hear a woman speak about herself that way when it's like, you just created a miracle and now all you're thinking about is how you're a failure. Like, that's awful. Yeah. So that's definitely an element of the script for sure.
And then also the fact that like, not that I know the age, but like in history, like women were given, I mean, especially in the Edinburgh times, women were giving birth at like starting at like 12 years old.
Literally,
You're like, a child. Like, you don't have to know how to feel. You do not have to know how to raise a child. I mean, I'm almost 30, and I think if you hand me a baby, I'd be like, I don't really know. So
Same. Like, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't really know.
Right. And it's like, yeah, okay, so women were like made to do that, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that you're gonna have all the answers just like right off that is it's crazy. And so it's another thing of like men prescribing this sort of idea on women and saying, well, if you don't do that, then I guess you're not a woman, so that's your problem. It's wild.
And like the threat of like the asylum culture of that time, of like, you know, sanatoriums, like John in the script does threaten her with that. Like, he says, if you don't get better, I'm going to have to send you to, you know, Dr. Mitchell, which is the name of the doctor who created the rest cure. And like, that's code for we're putting you in the sanatorium. Like, that's the next step. So get your shit together or else you'll be punished.
Right.
You know?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's wild. And it's wild that this happened in history over and over and over again. Yeah. And hopefully now with mental health becoming a conversation that we are actively trying to have, at least like us on the right side of history are trying to have, and to say, you know, hey, it's okay to not feel good sometimes, and shit happens, so you're not crazy, you're feeling your feelings, and we're gonna figure it out together, and it's gonna be great. But it's so exciting to be telling a story that is set in a completely different time, and yet everybody sitting in that audience, man, woman, non-binary, is sitting there and being able to see a part of it and say, I felt that before, or like, yeah, I understand what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the relationship too is, I think, one of the core things that really brought me to why I feel so connected to the story is the concept of making excuses for the people we love, even when they're harming us. You know, like there's so much of that complexity. And like, Morgan, you can speak to this too, just because you've been in the shoes of the role before, of like how easy it is to fall into a cycle of abuse when the two people love each other so much, and like making excuses of like, oh, well, maybe if I had just said something differently, he wouldn't have gotten so upset, or like, oh, maybe she'll have a good day tomorrow, and today was just a bad day. Like, you know, just feeding this cycle of harming each other, but calling it love. You know, I think that's something that's also really universal and human, and you know, painful to see that, you know, relationships like that you know, show up in every decade, every era.
Yeah. Or even like how they maintain like intimacy throughout, like, you know, her time. They're not supposed to necessarily, like, the cure doesn't necessarily call for like sex or intimacy, but like, you know, he's drawn to it because he does love her so deeply. And like, how does that harm her by him showing affection and by him showing intimacy and them having sex, you know, like, it's interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's just so much about it that, like you said, it lives on. Like there's so much that's recognizable for audiences now, even though this is like over 130 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so tell everybody when are the shows? When are you guys heading off, flying out over to Scotland?
Yeah, we're flying out very beginning of August, and the show opens August 7th and runs through the 29th. We're at Greenside on George Street in the Lime studio, and we're just gonna be there for the entire Fringe. So if anyone's swinging by Scotland and wants something to do, come see the Yellow Wallpaper.
What time is the show? I know that's a crazy thing, but it's the same time every day.
No, it's the same time every day. The show is at 4 p.m.
Great. Oh my gosh. I mean, I have listeners in Scotland that I'm sure will be so excited to get to be a part of this before the show even arrives into their beautiful country, and they get to feel this story from a different level. But oh my gosh, I'm so glad that we were able to do this, and I'm always so happy when I get to mix theater and my ghost storytelling and stuff. So it's so awesome that you guys created this story that bridges those two things for me specifically, of course, because I asked for it. Yeah, of course. Oh my gosh.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Thank you guys. All right. Well, we'll see you next time, Weird Club peoples. So what do you think? Are spirits really out there? Be sure to follow us on Instagram @OutThereCryptids for episode posts, updates, and more. Join our community on Discord, where we dive even deeper into the mysteries we explore here on the podcast. The link can be found on our Instagram. And if you're loving the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. As a patron, you'll get exclusive perks like bonus episodes, early access, and even surprises. See you next week.